Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome back to Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add the vintage vibes to your modern life. We're your hosts, Gonzalo.
And Jackie, thank you for joining us today. So today we're talking about The Wizard of Oz. Yes, I know it's technically earlier than our time period, but there is an interesting mid-century bit that ties it into our podcast nicely. But first, Gonzalo, how was your week?
My week was fine. It is the beginning of the spring semester for work, which means that I'm back at work, which means that I am tired all the time. But that's fine. It's worth it. It's for the kids. But no, it's been good. We are like a couple of weeks into the semester. We're already counting down to the summer as teachers. This is like, okay, so we get a like Martin Luther King Jr. Day break, and then we don't have another break until spring break. So it's like the longest part of the year without stopping.
Yeah, it's like that at normal jobs too. There's nothing until Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Which is in May.
Yeah.
So you gotta make your own fun.
Yeah, something just, sing along in your head to something while you're working. I can't do that because I have to talk. It's a job. But
right, that's true.
No, it's been good. Getting ready for our big championship for sports ball, which is actually not because it's swimming, so there's no ball. But sports, yay. How was your week?
Also boring. Well, basically, I'm trying to shake myself out of holiday mode, and it's not happening. Probably because it's just like too cold to function. But I've got like 2 sewing projects planned and my fabric pre-washed, but I haven't actually done anything on it yet. That's basically where I'm like pointing myself towards productivity and then like stopping short and watching Food Network instead. I don't know. That's where I am. But it's January. A lot of people just take January off from life anyway, so I guess I'm just one of those people too.
I wish I could.
But I need to start getting serious because I do have some mid-century food stuff I want to do for Valentine's Day, so I need to start planning that out. But yeah, I'm boring. I got nothing.
It's all good.
But anyway, do you know what isn't boring? The making of The Wizard of Oz.
I was gonna say that.
So basically, I'm bringing this movie up now because, like most of society, I am absolutely obsessed with Wicked right now. I was obsessed with it in high school when the musical came out, and I'm obsessed with it again with the movie. We're a little tardy to the party here because I know it came out in November, but it is available streaming now. So if anyone listening hasn't seen it, you can totally see it. But anyway, I think this is actually a perfect opportunity to look back at the musical that started it all, The Wizard of Oz.
Woo!
I think it's actually really easy to forget just what a big deal this film was and how hard it was to pull off in the 30s. It was cutting edge, expensive, and it took a lot of incredibly hard days of work from the production team and the actors. But before we get into all that, Gonzalo, what's your favorite song or scene from The Wizard of Oz?
So my favorite part is actually is it the beginning? It's the beginning of Land of Oz. It is the part after the Twister and the house gets pulled out of Kansas and then she falls into Land of Oz. Although I do love me some like music that goes on during the like when the witch is like when whatever her name is, who is the witch, is like on her bike and then becomes the witch on the broomstick. I love that music. But no, my favorite part is when the house falls and it goes from black and white to color. And a lot of info on that later. But I don't know. It's like the magical moment that the movie actually starts in. Everything else was a prologue.
So. I gotta feel that way too, except for how absolutely perfect Over the Rainbow was.
That's true.
Which makes the entire Kansas sequence worth it.
Yeah, I never liked it growing up. I always fast forwarded through that part, through the black and white part.
Yeah. I think my favorite scene is also my favorite song. It changes every time I rewatch it, but lately it's If I Only Had a Brain, mainly for the dancing.
Uh-huh.
I just find that scene amusing and like the choreography really cute. I don't know. It's just like such a fun moment. But anyway, So much cool stuff to cover, but before we get into it, here's just some basic facts about the movie to get us started. So, The Wizard of Oz came out August 15th, 1939, based on The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. It was directed by Victor Fleming and starred Judy Garland, Frank Morgan, Ray Bolger, Burt Lahr, Jack Haley, Billy Burke, and Margaret Hamilton. Production on the film actually began when Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 1937, showed that films adapted from popular children's stories and fairy tales could be successful. In fact, a lot of people at the time compared these two films. Here are some quotes from an article from the Pittsburgh Press from August 19th, 1939. So, quote, "Thousands of young and old were transported to a land of wonders, in many ways the equal of the enchanted region created by Disney and his staff for Snow White. Of course, the comparison between The Wizard of Oz and Snow White is inevitable because of the similarity of the two movies. Snow White is still the supreme work of the screen in its excursions into fantasy, but in my opinion, The Wizard is not far behind. Each is a masterpiece of ingenuity. Where Snow White had the advantage of using drawn figures, Wizard gets its effects and tells its charming story with living beings." End quote. It was really a huge feat to bring a production of this level. It cost a fortune to make, so it actually cost $2.8 million in 1930s money, which is $55 million in change in today's money, which is crazy, but honestly, you can see every dollar on the screen.
Yes. Also, I love how her and change is 2 cents. But here are some more production fun facts. So there were over 9,000 actors, 9,200. The music was played by a 130-piece orchestra and the backing chorus of 300 singers. 68 sets were also built for the film.
So speaking of sets, here's an interesting story from art director Cedric Gibbons. Quote, "So they gave us a script in which a little girl from Kansas lives a great adventure in a country of her own imagination, but neither in the script nor in the original book was there any description to indicate along what lines her imagination might build such a country, which left us, first of all, to do some imagining ourselves. Take one scene of the 50, for instance, the country the book calls Munchkinland, to be inhabited by very tiny people called Munchkins. To fashion a Munchkinland, which a little girl from Kansas might have dreamed, we began with the premise that the smallest things she had ever seen were probably ants. And how do ants live? Under grass and tree roots. So with toadstools and anthills as our architectural pattern, we made a proportionately larger grass and flowers, such as, for instance, hollyhocks 20 feet tall." So that's where they got that idea, of all of them like popping out from under flower pots and everything. I thought that was a really interesting
Yeah.
story.
I never thought about why they are what they are. They're just the Munchkins.
I thought that was really clever. I never really thought about that, but
Yeah.
isn't that such a cool inspirational story?
It is. Yes, yes. I don't want to gloss over the use of color in this film because this film just would not be as memorable without it. Here's another quote, though, from the Pittsburgh Press article. Quote, "Technicolor is, of course, the perfect medium for a fairy tale. It would be the next to impossible to believe in an enchanted land unless it was made to glow in rainbow hues. Once again, Technicolor triumphs in the visual delights of Wizard." End quote. So here's some just fun facts. Fun facts? They're fun to me. Facts about Technicolor. Technicolor is a family of color motion picture processes. The first version, Process 1, was introduced in 1916, and improved versions followed over the several decades. The process we know best, that was used in Golden Age of Hollywood, was Process 4, which started in the early 1930s and continued through the mid-1950s. Because this color process was still pretty new in the 30s, the production crew gave a lot of attention to the use of color in the film. Everything had to go through screen tests to make sure that the color translated well to film, and they ended up favoring some colors over others. It took the studio's art department almost a week to settle on the shade of yellow used for the Yellow Brick Road. The cast sequences were filmed in black and white and colored in sepia tone process. And there are some scenes which we see in black and white, actually not in black and white. For example, when the house falls, right, that is still filmed in black and white with sepia tones. And there's a scene in which the camera is looking at the door of the house, and Dorothy appears. You'll see her face. She appears from the back and opens the door. And then when she opens the door, it's a color. All that was done in color. It's just that the inside of the house is painted to look sepia so that whenever the camera opens the door, it's like bright and colorful. So like the costume that is on screen and like the makeup is all made to look like sepia.
Yeah, they actually used a double for that. So when you really see Dorothy's dress, it's actually a stunt double wearing a sepia tone dress. And then when the camera turns around and she walks out of the house, then it's Judy Garland in her blue dress.
Yes.
And they just like light it in such a way that you can't tell that her dress is blue until she steps outside. But like there was a whole bunch of like, it was very, yeah, that's a really cool scene.
Yeah.
I could see why that's your favorite.
Yes.
So production on the Technicolor sequences ran for over 6 months, from October 1938 to March 1939. Most of the cast worked 6 days a week and had to arrive as early as 4 a.m. for makeup and costumes, and often did not leave till 7 p.m. or later. The Technicolor process also required daylight bright lighting, which could heat the set to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit,
Ooh.
which was especially uncomfortable for the actors in heavy costumes and makeup. And it also had the side effect of bringing the production's electricity bill to a staggering estimate of $225,000 in 1930s money, which would be $4,900,000 in today's money, just for the electricity bill.
Which is also the amount of money that one pays for AC in Houston.
Here are some more uncomfortable costume and makeup trivia facts that I found. So the Ray Bolger's scarecrow mask and makeup took 2 hours to apply and an hour to remove each day. The Wicked Witch and the Cowardly Lion's makeup was so intense and toxic that the actors were forced to eat a liquid diet on shoot days so they could just drink through straws. Bert Lahr's Cowardly Lion costume was actually made from real lion skins,
Ew.
fur, and some human hair. Yeah,
Ew.
a thing. It weighed 50 pounds and it took 3 dressers to get him into it. At 16 years old, Judy Garland was technically too old for the part. Dorothy was 8 years old in the book, so the costume department went through like really silly lengths to make sure she looked less womanly, including taping her chest down and making her wear a corset that flattened her figure out.
Oh.
The Tin Man wore 50 cents worth of real aluminum in his daily makeup. So there's the budget going up again.
50 cents of that time?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I didn't look up what 50 cents is in today's money.
Let's say about $1 million.
A less fun fact, but since we're talking about the makeup, I feel like we have to tell the story because people are going to wonder why we didn't. So the real aluminum in the Tin Man makeup famously poisoned the original actor, Buddy Ebsen. He lived, but he was hospitalized and had to leave the production so that he could recover. And they did not tell the story to Jack Haley when he replaced Ebsen. Haley just assumed Ebsen had been fired. The makeup was changed, so it became like an aluminum paste with a layer of clown white grease paint underneath in order to protect his skin the second time, so they learned their lesson. But
still not right.
Yikes.
You should have disclosed that.
Because they were just going to put aluminum on this guy too, but they
Yeah.
figured out how to make it so that it wasn't directly on his skin.
Yeah, but they weren't sure that was going to work.
Right.
So.
The 30s. They didn't have actors' rights yet.
No. So let's lighten the mood a little bit with some fun facts. So it was the longest screen role ever written for a dog, at least by 1939. Toto appears in every scene of the 90-minute film. And Toto was played by a girl dog named Terry and was trained by her owner, who ran a dog training school in Hollywood. The, quote, horse of a different color was played by multiple horses, and they used Jell-O powder for coloring, so it would be safe when the horses licked it. Which, sidebar, they made the makeup for the animal safe, but not for the human.
But not for the human.
Yes. Anyway, back to fun facts. Frank Morgan, who played the wizard, spent 4 months practicing the magic tricks he performs in the movie. Oh, that's cool.
Isn't it?
Yes. The Wizard of Oz was a critical success and was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, winning Best Original Song for Over the Rainbow, and Best Original Score. An Academy Juvenile Award was presented to Judy Garland. But even though the movie was such a success, it failed to turn a profit, probably due to the high production costs more than the low box office returns. The original theatrical release only earned $3 million on a $2.7 million budget, making it MGM's most expensive production at the time. Thankfully, they made up the money in re-releases, eventually grossing $29.7 million.
And now we're finally in the mid-century.
Woo! I don't know why. Woo. It's hard for us to picture it now, but there was a time before home video where the only way you could see a movie was to go and see it in a theater or on television broadcasts once a year, if you were lucky.
I actually already own the digital version of Wicked and have rewatched it 3 times.
Of course. Back to the Wizard. The Wizard of Oz was actually released in theaters nationwide 3 times. Its original run in 1939, again in 1949, and once more in 1955. Fun fact about 1949, that reissue used sepia tone for the Kansas scenes, but the 1955 reissue showed the Kansas scenes in black and white instead, a practice that continued for the television broadcasts, but was fixed by the time it got to home video.
And that brings us to the mid-century tie-in I was talking about earlier, the television broadcasts. So The Wizard of Oz was so beloved that it was chosen to be the first Hollywood film to be shown uncut in prime time on a coast-to-coast television network. The first telecast took place on Saturday, November 3rd, 1956. The broadcast was a rating success with a Nielsen rating of 33.9 and an audience share of 53%. I don't know how good that is compared to other things, but I'm mentioning them here so that we can compare them to their ratings later. Do you speak Nielsen ratings? Do you know what that means?
No. Numbers.
Cool.
Remember, I don't do numbers.
The Wizard of Oz was not broadcast again until 1959, but this time they showed it at an earlier time, so the 1959 one was at 6 p.m. And since it was played earlier, more children tuned into the broadcast, and it gained an even larger audience than before. So this time they got a Nielsen rating of 36.5 and an audience share of 58%.
Improvements. From 1959 to 1991, the showing of The Wizard of Oz was an annual tradition on American commercial network television. The film was always shown as a standalone TV special. Network telecasts became a highly anticipated family event for many. The Wizard of Oz drew large audiences annually for many decades. Here's a quote from Time magazine from Friday, January 15th, 1965. Quote, "Parents are again preparing for the occasion. It will occur this coming Sunday for the 7th straight year, and the children, with special restlessness, will collect around the television set in much the way that their fathers do for the professional football championships. The children know the names and styles of the players they are going to see, for the program has become a modern institution and a red-letter event in the calendar of childhood. It is the Oz Bowl game, CBS's annual telecast of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's The Wizard of Oz." End quote.
So it was a really big deal.
Yes.
And I love that for it. Also, some extra bits about the telecast. So the original 1956 telecast was hosted by Burt Lahr, who played the Cowardly Lion, and he was joined by the daughter of Judy Garland, a then 10-year-old Liza Minnelli, and another young Oz expert named Justin G. Schiller. The practice of a show business celebrity regularly hosting The Wizard of Oz lasted from the film's first television showing until 1968, when the film went to NBC after being shown on CBS 9 times. Between 1959 and 1968, CBS chose its host from its then current primetime lineup. So in 1959, the host was Red Skelton from The Red Skelton Show. In 1960, it was Richard Boone from Have Gun, Will Travel. And in 1961 and 1962, it was Dick Van Dyke.
Nice.
From The Dick Van Dyke Show and other things. And from 1964 through 1967, it was Danny Kaye from The Danny Kaye Show. Skelton, Boone, and Van Dyke brought their then young children to appear with them as hosts.
So it's all those CBS people listening, directors and producers and stuff. You guys should bring this back because it is that time with Wicked out on like parade. And then when you make money out of that, remember our little podcast. But from the beginning, The Wizard of Oz was telecast in color. Between 1956 and 1965, The Wizard of Oz showings were rare exceptions to the black and white program scheduled at CBS. During this period, CBS had the ability to broadcast programs in color, but generally chose not to do so unless a sponsor paid for a film or program to be shown in color. Color broadcast did not play a major role on TV networks until 1965, at which time half the network shows from ABC and CBS were being made and shown in color. The film was not issued on home video formats until the 1980s.
So, you mentioned the 1980s, so that brings us to our connection to today. So we mentioned earlier that the film was a critical success at the time, but here are some other accolades for the film from later in time. The Wizard of Oz has been featured in 9 of the American Film Institute, AFI's Best Of list, including AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies, it was number 6. AFI's 100 Years, 100 Songs, Over the Rainbow was number 1, and Ding Dong the Witch is Dead was number 82.
I do love that song.
AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movie Quotes. Toto, I've Got a Feeling We're Not in Kansas Anymore was number 4. There's No Place Like Home was number 23. And I'll Get You, My Pretty, and Your Little Dog Too was number 99.
Other honors, which is a huge list, so we're only going to go through a few of the interesting ones, or what we call the interesting ones. In 1989, the film was one of the inaugural group of 25 films added to the National Film Registry list. In 1999, Entertainment Weekly's 100 Greatest Films put it on their list at number 32. In 2005, the British Film Institute ranked it second on its list of the 50 films you should see by the age of 14. In 2020, the British Film Institute changed its list to 50 films to see by age 15, updated, and The Wizard of Oz was still included, calling Oz, quote, the most wonderful of musicals. And lastly, in 2022, the film was ranked second in Variety's inaugural list of the 100 greatest movies of all time.
There were also quite a few sequels and reinterpretations. So there was an official 1972 sequel, but it was animated, The Journey Back to Oz, and this featured the voice of Judy Garland's daughter, Liza Minnelli, and it was produced to commemorate the original film's 35th anniversary. The Wiz, a musical based on the novel, opened in 1974 in Baltimore and in 1975 on Broadway, and it went on to win 7 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, and then a film adaptation was released in 1978.
It's going to be coming to Houston soon. Or
Is it?
this
Neat.
season?
It's touring?
It's in. I thought I saw it in this season's list.
In 1975, a comic book adaptation of the film titled MGM's Marvelous Wizard of Oz was released. It was the first co-production between DC Comics and Marvel Comics, which is really interesting. In 1985, Walt Disney Productions released the live-action fantasy film Return to Oz, which was based on the books The Marvelous Land of Oz from 1904 and Ozma of Oz from 1907. And this movie is supposed to be terrifying. Have you seen it? I haven't seen it.
I've seen bits and pieces, and they're terrifying in the sense that Labyrinth is terrifying.
Ah, okay. Yeah, the 80s was weird for children's media.
Yeah, it's like it's supposed to be a scary movie for kids, and it is an interesting / scary movie. Like it's like, okay, yeah, if I watch this as a kid, I'm gonna be a little scared. If I watch this as an adult, I'm gonna be a little like, why? But I've never seen the whole thing. I've been wanting to.
I bet it's on Disney Plus.
Yeah. There's also a movie with James Franco in it.
Oh yeah.
Something
That
about
didn't-
Oz. And
That wasn't in the list of things. Yeah, Oz the Great and Powerful.
yes.
I actually saw that on a Disney cruise.
I was gonna say I saw that on an airplane once. It's one of those type of movies you only see whenever you're traveling.
Right, yeah, it was fine. But of course, the Broadway musical Wicked premiered in 2003, and it's based on the film, a combination of The Wizard of Oz plus the original novel of Wicked. Wicked is the second highest grossing Broadway musical of all time, and it won 3 Tony Awards, 7 Drama Desk Awards, and a Grammy Award. The movie version of the musical entered development at Universal Pictures in 2004.
Whoa.
And I remember being excited back then, and then they made us wait 20 years.
Yeah.
And then it finally became a 2-part film adaptation directed by John Chu. The first film was released on November 22nd, 2024, and the second, Wicked for Good, is scheduled for November 21st, 2025.
Hashtag worth it. I like the movie.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
Every time I listen to the soundtrack, I love it more. I actually really love the way the recording sounds. Like, the instruments are so sharp and clear compared to the Broadway soundtrack. I don't know if it's just because we've gotten better at recording music, or we just mix music differently for, like, modern tastes.
Yeah, maybe.
But, like, I'm aware of instruments that I didn't know were there in the original soundtrack, so I'm wondering if they, like, added more electric guitars or something.
Oh, that's interesting. They probably did add some stuff to make it stand out. I will say, great movie, great musicals, but if I'm listening to a soundtrack in the car, it's going to be the original Broadway one.
I tried that. It might just be because it's new and shiny that I'm, like, really, really into the movie version right now.
It was really good. Okay. I really loved, this is so cliche, lights go down and you're really excited, and then like the beginning notes of the opening number happen, and I don't know, it felt like being in the movie, in the musical. It felt like you were watching a live action thing, and there's something about live action musicals that I love, that it's like completely passionate. Like, there's no way to have any play, not just musicals, but especially musicals, without having like the passion behind by the actors. It's like, I don't know, something that there was a quote actually from the late Dame Joan Plowright, who just passed away sadly this week. She was one of the greatest theater actresses. Like, she loved theater, and she said once in an interview that she did movies when you had to pay. So she goes, the films are for when you need the roof mended. And I was like, yes, because people are in films and it makes a lot of money, but people who are in theater make peanuts, but you can tell that that's what they want to be doing. So long story short, my favorite part was the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, I have a new appreciation for No One Mourns the Wicked, specifically because of how powerful it is when you can actually see Glinda's face.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you see it live, I've seen it live twice. The thing about theater is you can't really see facial expressions. They have to act with their body because you have to give the same performance to the people in the back.
Yeah.
But like being able to see like the hurt in her eyes in that opening scene, like it really just starts you off on this emotional journey. It was perfect.
It was really good.
Oh my goodness, I loved it so much.
I also liked, so after that opening number, when they put the title plate on the screen, and then the camera's like flying towards the Emerald City, and you see the 4 original characters walking with the broom.
Another tie-in to the topic we're talking about, which is supposed to be the Wizard of Oz. I did hear we're going to get a lot more Dorothy in part 2 than we do in the musical. So that'll be really cool.
Yes.
And I cannot wait to see what they do with it. Now I trust them completely, and I'm just excited.
I am ready.
I was so nervous before I saw it, and they blew me away. So now I really just, I trust them, and it's going to be great. And I cannot wait to hear Cynthia Erivo sing the Act 2 songs.
I can't wait for Good, because that's one of my favorite songs of Act 2 in a musical. So I really enjoy the fact that the movie is going to be called For Good.
Isn't that cute?
So
I love it.
But anyways.
If anyone else obsessed with Wicked right now, let us know and send us a text message in the show notes and tell us how much you loved Wicked.
Or send us a DM on Instagram at MCL Podcast.
But now that we're caught up to the present, it is time for our etiquette segment. So, Gonzalo, what do we have today?
All right. So my transition, it's not my best, but just go with it, okay? So because we talked about a movie, and movies are, or maybe were, I don't know if they still are, date ideas and locations, today's etiquette is about dating.
Neat. Okay.
I'm straying away from my usual read of Amy Vanderbilt's complete etiquette book. These are actually 17 rules for mid-century dating that come from Reader's Digest instead. The post actually is called 17 Ridiculous Dating Etiquette Rules from the 1950s, so you guys decide if it's ridiculous or not. But the introduction to the article says it is some do's and don'ts that, quote, show why spending a Saturday night with your sweetheart during the 50s was the cat's meow.
Cute.
Yes. I love that. I don't understand it, but I think it's very mid-century. Anyway, so first off, making the first move. Only guys are supposed to ask girls out. Girls should never ask guys out. Only, quote, floozies did that. You're supposed to ask immediately when someone asks you out, which makes sense. Before online dating or texting existed, you'd have to call someone, and it would probably be very hard or awkward to be like, I'll let you know later. I feel like that's an answer in and of itself.
Yeah.
You cannot break a date without a good excuse. I have to wash my hair tonight. It's not a good excuse.
Fair.
Next up, be on time. Women should never be late to a date. When your date arrives to pick you up, you should be ready to go. Some of these were very pointed towards either the girl or the guy. Number 5, meeting the parents first. It was customary for a girl to introduce her date to her parents first before dating. Makeup in public was a no-go. Apply your makeup on before leaving for the date, not in public when you're already out on your date.
Yeah.
We've covered this next one before, but for a lady, if your date takes you out to dinner, it was ladylike for you to tell him what you wanted so that he could order it for you.
Yeah, I remember that etiquette episode.
Yes. Men, the bill is your responsibility. It was considered humiliating for a girl to pay for the meal, which I feel is the wrong reason to pay for the meal. Procrastinating when asking a girl out was one of the worst moves. Just go and ask her out. I sympathize with that because it's hard. When picking up your date, men, you are expected to come up to the door to the house and call for her. It's bad manners to honk the horn from the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
Guys are supposed to ask his date's parents what time he should bring her back home, so make sure your watch was ticking is a must. Guys, if you want to show your date how polite you are, you would help her put on her coat. This would be extra special if you offered her your coat when she didn't have one. Real gentlemen open car doors for their dates. Really, men should open all the doors. Regarding walking on the street, men should walk between their date and the curb to protect from splashing. That is also a tip that I believe we've covered before.
Mm-hmm.
While it doesn't mean you need to be rich, if you are a guy, you should bring enough money to pay for everything for you and your date for the entirety of the night. Also, number 16, no kissing on the first date. And the last one, for formal dances, a corsage is a must.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about these 17 rules?
I love them, but I'm old-fashioned. Except I agree with you a little bit about the corsage. Except for I kind of love those too. I don't know. I'm trying to find. I mean, I kind of like this. This to me is a list of things similar to what we've covered before. Where my, like, I feel like these are great goals. Even if they're not super practical all the time. I think like striving for this kind of perfection is still worth doing.
Yes.
Like most of the meeting the parents first stuff is irrelevant once you get out of high school and things like that. But I feel like you're not going to hurt anything by doing any of these things. Like these will only help you.
Yes.
And it is a lot more, but then again, this is a lot more pressure on the men in the relationship to do all of the hard work. And it kind of just sounds like the hardest thing a girl has to remember to do is make sure her makeup is done by the time the doorbell rings. So I'm perhaps slightly biased.
I like the rules. I just think some of them could be for both men and women. Like the whole like paying for the date. Like I've always thought like whoever asks for the date, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, that's the thing
dates.
is like it could go either way. Like instead of it, this list assumes it's the man doing all the asking and the man doing all the paying. But you're right. Whoever asks for the date could pay for the date, and it's not really considered humiliating to pay your own way.
Yeah, it's not at all. That's what like
so.
I had a problem with that. Cause like, yeah, you should want to pay for your date, especially in a first date, men. But if she offers to pay or she does pay, I don't think you should take it as like a stab to your manhood. It's just we live in 2020s.
That's a good way to modernize it. I like that idea. Just like whoever asks for the date should at least come prepared to pay.
Yeah.
But don't make a big deal out of it if she insists on, or the other party insists on paying, or you can split it or anything. Yeah, there are ways to modernize it, but I feel like for the most part, these are just like
they're very apt to the mid-century. I'll put it like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I like them though.
I did too. Let's give them a stamp.
Yeah, stamp. That sound effect is in the mail, guys. I swear one day we'll get a soundboard.
Yes, we will. And with that, it looks like we have landed the house on the witch. Or the plane. Thank you guys all for listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram at MCL Podcast. Instagram is the best place to send us feedback and episode suggestions, so send us a DM anytime. And you can also contact us through the Send Us a Text Message feature in the show notes.
Yeah, so send us some mail. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.